I used to think a marriage comes apart like old fabric. You hear the threads pop, you see the thinning, you get time to decide whether to patch or let go. It turns out some marriages come apart like tempered glass, immaculate one second, a million glittering knives the next, each reflecting a version of your life you don't recognize. My name is Ryan Walsh. I'm 29, a network technician who spends most days crawling under desks, labeling cables, and rescuing small businesses from printers with malicious intent. Emma, my wife, 26, is a social media manager at a boutique firm that helps founders look like they woke up enlightened. When she got the job, she came home airy with triumph, talking a mile a minute about the perks like she'd discovered a new country. 6-hour workdays, 20% above market, 7 weeks of paid vacation. Her boss, a self-made private guy named Victor Hale, apparently believed in rested brains, restless ideas. She told me this with the kind of reverence people reserve for saints. We clinked glasses with a bottle of Pinot we couldn't really afford and promised ourselves this was the start of our adult life finally living up to the brochure. At first, I loved the way work lit her up. There's an expression she gets when she's excited. Chin lifted a little, eyes bright like stage lights have just come up. She'd bounce on the balls of her feet in our kitchen, telling me Victor had instituted no meeting Fridays and a daily 2-hour deep work block where Slack went silent. "He's different," she said, rinsing salad greens like she was baptizing them. "He actually walks the talk." I didn't know then that different was going to become a prayer, then a permission slip, then a cliff. The first time I met Victor was at their winter party, January, at a warehouse venue off the river, concrete polished to a shine, strings of Edison bulbs hanging like a Pinterest mood board. Victor stood by the bar in a charcoal suit that fit as if the tailor had been paid in secrets. He wasn't movie star handsome exactly. He had the kind of face you only notice because everyone else is noticing him. Stillness, that's what it was. He didn't fidget, he listened. When someone spoke, he angled his body a fraction toward them like he was tuning a radio. When Emma introduced me, I offered my hand. His grip was firm, quick, no squeeze me like a grapefruit macho show. He had calluses on the base of his fingers that didn't match the suit. "Ryan," he said in a voice that lived somewhere in the lower register of a cello. "We've heard good things. Emma's been a force." It was the way he said Emma's name, like it was already italicized in his head, that made something in me look for a seatbelt. I told myself not to be ridiculous. Emma's face, flushed with champagne and validation, was playing in a different league than weird male intuition. Later, when a cover band launched into a late 2000s indie set, I watched from our table as she stood a little too straight whenever he walked by, as if someone had tugged a string in her spine. We got home at 1010 a.m. to our one-bedroom apartment above a bodega that always smelled like watered-down bleach and ripe bananas. In the bathroom, Emma leaned on the sink and smiled at the mirror like it had applauded. "He's a real one," she said to no one in particular, then turned to me. "Did you see the way he asked Nina about her dad? He remembered the hospital, the floor. People don't remember floors." "I noticed," I said, wrapping my arm around her waist, the satin of her dress cool against my palm. My own thoughts were less about floors and more about gravity. She started scrolling that night on the couch, legs over my lap. At first it was normal, company Instagram, behind-the-scenes reels, a Forbes profile of Victor from 2 years back where he said something about the dignity of small teams and the tyranny of scale. Then she went deeper. You wouldn't notice if you weren't watching her scroll muscle. She slowed to read photo captions that were 8 years old. She searched Victor Hale plus keynote, pulled up grainy recordings, listened with a half smile. She paused on a black and white portrait where he was younger, less polished. "He used to wear bad shoes," she said, like she was relieved he'd evolved. At midnight, she fell asleep on my knee with her phone resting face down on her stomach like a warm stone. The next morning, she told me about the 6-hour workday again, this time with data. Productivity rose, churn dropped, blah blah. I nodded and poured coffee, trying not to feel like the guy in the commercial who buys a sensible sedan when the couple next door gets a convertible. The thing is, none of this was cheating. That's how it sneaks up on you, the fact that worship is not a crime. She was allowed to admire her boss. I told myself to breathe. The gym came next. Emma had been a casual treadmill person, the kind who wears matching sets and posts once every 6 months about endorphins. Now she announced she was joining a new place. Pulse Athletic, across from Victor's office downtown. "Our old gym smells like a high school locker room," she said, tossing her fob on the counter. "Pulse has proper equipment, real trainers, and a sauna that doesn't look like it survived a divorce. It's 40 minutes from here, I said. Only after work, she said. I'll go mornings, then head straight to the office. It's basically on the way. I work with routers for a living. I know routes. Downtown is not on the way from our apartment in North Tabor to her office in the Pearl. But she had that chin-lifted look, and I was tired of being the gravity to her helium. Try it, I said. Just don't forget there's a gym 2 blocks away we're still paying for. She laughed, kissed me quickly, and left with both fobs on her keychain like a person keeping options open. A month later, I noticed the calendar shift. Emma's life became a lattice of tiny rituals she narrated like an influencer. Sunday reset, Monday deep work, Wednesday sauna, Friday systems, which I learned was code for setting up content calendars and pre-scheduling posts. She went from someone who rolled out of bed 10 minutes before leaving to a person who set a 6001 a.m. alarm labeled Prime Brain. She started reading long-form profiles of founders in bed, mumbling lines into her notes app like she was braiding other people's sentences into her own. When she talked about Victor, it was in a new tense. He didn't just build a company, he built a way for people to belong. He says genius is compounding patience. What do you say? I asked lightly. She blinked, like the question wasn't in the script. I say, I'm lucky to be learning, she said, and the way she said lucky made me want to check our deadbolts. At home, she started making anonymous accounts for competitive analysis, which is industry for spying legally. She followed competitor agencies, their clients, the clients' spouses. At first, we laughed about how predictable it all was. Every founder has a dog and a cold plunge, she'd say dryly, tapping through a carousel of a man in a beanie hugging a golden retriever. Then, without announcing when the border had been crossed, she made accounts that weren't quite work. A blank profile with a neutral name, another with a woman's face I didn't recognize. Lurkers, she said when I asked. It's better for the algorithm if the likes aren't all from us. One night, washing dishes, I noticed her phone lighting up over and over with new account login alerts. 10 minutes later, my inbox chimed. Password reset for Victor Photography, which I knew was a throwback account he'd used when he was dabbling in amateur street photos. Emma had set up email forwards from old Gmails to consolidate things. She'd forgotten to turn one off. I stared at the subject line and told myself that even if she were trying to guess his passwords, that didn't make her a criminal. She'd say it was research, understanding audience sentiment, creating a heat map of attention. When I mentioned boundaries, she rolled her eyes. Everyone in this industry watches. Some of us are just better at it. In March, when the rain felt like it had a union contract, Emma asked for a pause. We were sitting on the sofa eating takeout from Faux Oregon, steam fogging the window. She set down her chopsticks, wiped her mouth carefully with a napkin like it might matter later whether there was sauce on her lip, and said, I'm confused. About us? I almost joked, but the words died. Her eyes were not soft. I need to think, she said, about who I'm becoming. I don't want to hurt you, and I don't want to lie. I love you, Ryan, I do, but I need to make sure it's not just comfort. So the opposite of comfort is what? I asked, gentle and very tired. I don't know, she said. Curiosity? Aliveness? We negotiated a separation like two people dividing a playlist. I would keep the apartment for now. She would stay at a friend's place in the Pearl temporarily. We would keep our joint account live for rent and utilities, but split discretionary spending. We would book a couples therapist, someone neutral, who wouldn't treat me like a ballast and her like a hot air balloon. Those first nights without her were loud with silence. I cooked badly and ate standing up. I played guitar in the bedroom at a volume that wouldn't get us evicted. I watched videos of other men fixing things in their garages. When she came by to pick up a suitcase, she stood in the doorway and looked around like she was remembering a dream. I'm not leaving, she said. Just breathing. She reached up and touched the side of my face with 2 fingers, the way she always did when she wanted me to know she meant the pain. Then she was gone. 1 week into the pause, my brother Jake posted a story. I wasn't supposed to see it. We're brothers, yes, but our social media overlap is mostly stupid memes and family photos. Still, there it was at the top, Jake, at a restaurant I recognized by its half-moon mirrors and fake ivy. 2 hands across a candlelit table, fingers threaded, the kind of shot couples take when they want to be coy. I would have scrolled past it with an eye roll, except I knew my wife's knuckles. The tiny white scuff on her left ring finger from when she caught it on the edge of a cabinet the week we moved in. the chipped mauve polish she favored in winter, the bracelet cheap gold from a street fair, but hers, always. I tapped back. The story had been up 20 minutes, my chest filled with static. I texted Jake, "Who's that?" He didn't reply. I screenshotted it and sat on the edge of our bed and stared at the door until my eyes went out of focus. 3 hours later, Jake wrote, "Chill, man. Didn't know you'd take it like that. It's just a hand." At which point I called him. "What are you doing?" I asked without hello. A long sigh. "I didn't think." "That's the problem," I said. "You don't." Look, it popped up in my memories thing, and I reshared. "Memories?" He exhaled again. "It was from last night, okay? I saw Emmett Harrell with some guy." She looked happy. I figured the pause was an open situation. "You figured wrong," I said. "And even if you figured right, you don't throw gasoline." He was quiet long enough that I thought he'd hung up. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I'll take it down." But that wasn't the point, and we both knew it. I texted Emma, "What is this?" I added the screenshot. The message flipped to read almost immediately. Then nothing. A minute later, the typing dots. Then nothing. Then she sent, "Please don't do this tonight." I stared at the sentence like it might rearrange itself into something that included an apology. It didn't. I didn't reply. Neither did she. The next morning, on a call under a conference room table replacing an Ethernet switch that had decided to retire without notice, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then stepped into the hallway to listen in case it was a client. A man's voice, precise, like a scalpel. "Mr. Walsh, this is Victor Hale. Please call me as soon as you can." I felt my heart do something dumb. I called back. "Thank you," he said, and I could hear city noise behind him. The cavern acoustics of a lobby. "I'm sure this is awkward for both of us, so I'll be brief. We received an anonymous complaint this morning addressed to HR, alleging that Emma is in violation of company policy and that I am in a relationship with a direct report. The letter claims to be from her ex-husband." "I didn't send anything," I said too quickly. "I assumed as much," he said. "It was poorly written." "Then why call me?" "Because whoever sent it included personal details only someone close would know, the apartment building, your dog's name." He paused. "We do not have a dog, Mr. Walsh." The floor shifted under my feet like a train had passed. "We do not," I said. "I'd like to keep this as contained as possible," he said. "We have policies. Nora and HR will follow them. But I was hoping to ask you a favor. If you receive communication you believe is intended to escalate, screenshots, rumors, I would appreciate if you'd share it with us directly rather than distributing." "I'm not distributing," I said, and heard my own defensiveness. "I wouldn't know where to distribute. I'm trying to breathe." He was silent long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "I understand," he said finally, and I believed he did, in the way that a surgeon understands pain as a concept. "Emma is on her way in. I wanted to let you know before she called you upset." "She's not big on calling me these days," I said. "I'm sorry for that," he said, and I realized with a sharp, petty clarity that he wasn't sorry at all. He was wrapping the call. "Mr. Hale," I said before he could end it, "how did you and my wife meet?" "We're adults," he said, wary now. "Wary now! Humor me." "In a reasonable world," he said, "adults don't owe their spouses a narrative." "So not reasonable then," I said. "I'll ask the question a different way. Was Bumble involved?" A beat. "Yes," he said. "We matched last month. We took our time. We have taken our time." My grip tightened on the phone until my palm ached. "Thank you for the honesty," I said, and ended the call before I could ask the thing that would humiliate me further. "Are you in love with her? Are you the kind of man who collects pronouns like trophies?" At lunch, the city had its spring face on cherry blossoms like pink confetti over sidewalks, people who forgot rain acting like it had never existed. I ate a sandwich on a bench and watched pigeons fight over a potato chip and thought about radius settings. I'm not a detective, but I know my way around Wi-Fi, GPS, breadcrumbs. People don't know they leave. Bumble doesn't deliver coincidences. On a platter, you have to set the table. If Emma stood in Victor's lobby often enough before work in a 10-mile radius window at 7:30 a.m., if she swiped long enough, if she tweaked her profile to match the kind of woman who seemed plausible in his world, neutral wardrobe, bookish captions, a fondness for the word build, then a chance match starts to look like gravity. That night, she called. "Did you email HR?" she said without hello. Her voice was tight, wired. "No," I said. "Victor called me." She inhaled sharply. "What did he say?" That someone pretending to be me wants to blow up your life, I said. He asked me not to help. A sound that might have been a laugh if it hadn't been so bleak. Of course he did. What do you want me to do, Emma? I asked. Because if it were me, I know what you'd do. You'd stalk the person who hurt you until you knew which side they parted their hair. She didn't rise to the bait. I want you not to ruin me, she said quietly. That assumes I have that power, I said. You do, she said, and I heard the truth in it like a chord. You have what you know. You have the right to be angry. You have a brother with a thumb and an audience. Please, I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you not to pour gasoline. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Did you meet him on Bumble? I asked. Or in a gym? Silence. When she spoke again, her voice had moved half an octave lower. What difference does it make? It makes a difference to me, I said, because one of those is a coincidence and the other is choreography. Her breath came out in a soft, furious hiss. Fine, we matched on the app. There, now can we stop playing court? You told me last week you needed space to figure out who you were, I said. It took you 7 days to use that space to find a man you've been building a shrine to for months. Don't reduce me to a shrine, she snapped, and for a second there she was, the woman who would argue with a street sign if it used the wrong font. I'm not a fangirl, I'm a professional. I respect him and She caught herself. I think we could be good for each other. You're an employee, I said. In a different department, she said. Nora will make sure the structure is compliant. Do you hear yourself? Ryan, she said, and now she sounded tired, beyond tired. We said we were paused. We didn't say we were strangers, I said. We didn't say we were free to lie about how the match happened. She didn't respond. The line filled with the translucent jelly of silence that phones serve when they can't deliver connection. I ended the call and sat with my own breathing. After, in the apartment that had never felt smaller, I opened my laptop and did something I'd told myself I wouldn't. I logged into our home router admin page. 4 devices were always on the network. My phone, my work laptop, the living room TV, the old iPad we use for recipes. Last seen, the iPad, 11,058 p.m. Connection to a login page for an Instagram account with a name that was a woman's first and last. That, after 5 minutes of searching, I learned belonged to a Portland yoga instructor who hadn't posted in 2 years. Someone had used our iPad to access a dormant account, probably to avoid triggering the 2-factor on Emma's work phone. I clicked deeper and saw a string of late-night sessions tied to logins for small, generic accounts whose only activity was to like every post where Victor appeared within minutes of it going live. Competitive analysis, I told myself. Then, quietly in my own head, I said the other words, stalking. I closed the laptop and went to bed and stared at the ceiling until the smoke alarm's green LED blinked me toward morning. On the 4th morning of our pause, I got a text from Jake. Don't blow up, but you should know she's at Pulse every morning at 6,030. Jake is a paramedic. His rig does regular drop-offs near the downtown hospitals. I typed, then deleted 3 versions of "What are you, my PI?" and finally sent "Stop sending recon." He replied with a photo anyway. The entrance of Pulse Athletic, their logo all brushed steel and confidence, and a woman with Emma's posture in a gray hoodie scanning in. The timestamp said 6029. I showered too hot and was late to my first call of the day. That afternoon, my phone lit up with an email from Nora in HR at Hale & Partners. Subject line, policy review. Body. Ryan, as part of our standard process, we will be reviewing reporting structures and communications logs. Please be assured that we will handle this discreetly. If you are contacted by any third parties regarding your wife's employment, we recommend referring them to us. My eyes stuck on communications logs. In my world, that means IP addresses, VPN tunnels, timestamps, the kind of data that tells a story people think they hid. Suddenly, all my sympathetic anxiety snapped into a different shape. I responded, "Received. I will refer any inquiries." At 8:14 that evening, after I'd eaten dinner alone and considered texting Emma and didn't, my phone dinged again. Jake, predictably, I took the story down. My bad. Also, heads up, Emma just posted from Harrow again. Close friends list. Guess I'm on it. He attached a screenshot he shouldn't have had. 2 cocktails, one hand, hers on a napkin. Across from it, the sleeve of a dark jacket, a watch face catching light. I recognized the shape from an image search I'd done late one night when I hated myself. The watch Victor was never photographed without, a black ceramic square that cost more than our rent. I didn't reply to Jake. I don't know why exactly. Maybe because I was tired of being the person in my own life taking notes. The next day began with two blows. The first was a call from my mother, who had seen some iteration of Jake's story reposted by someone in the extended family web who never met a secret she didn't knit into a sweater. "Rye," Mom said, voice careful, the way she spoke when telling me as a kid that a pet had died. "Is there something you need to tell me?" I told her I didn't know what to tell her yet. She cried for a minute and then moved into logistics. "Mothers are generals in a war against chaos. I can come by tomorrow. I can bring lasagna. Do you need sheets?" "Your guest bed needs better sheets." The second blow was a group chat notification. Guys' night. A dumb thread with my high school friends who mostly talk about fantasy football and whose kids have turned into human random number generators. A link sat there like a snake coiled among emojis. I clicked without thinking. A local forum, anonymous posts, a new thread, influencer agency scandal. The first post had a blurred photo that still, somehow, captured the angle of Emma's jaw. The comments were what comments always are: hungry, horny, moral, cruel. By noon, the thread had 100 replies. By 1, it had 10 times that. I put my phone face down on my desk and said aloud to the empty room, "Stop!" Nothing stopped. At 4:30, as I was packing up to bail out of consciousness with a run, my phone rang. "Emma, can I come by?" she said. "Please." "You have a key," I said, then immediately hated the pettiness. "I'd like to be invited," she said. I hesitated. "Come." She arrived in a hoodie and leggings, hair scraped into a knot that made her cheekbones look like weapons she wasn't sure how to use. She didn't cross the threshold. "Did you send anything?" she asked, eyes shining. "To the forum? To Nora? To Victor?" "No," I said. Her shoulders dropped a centimeter. "It's bad," she said, and stepped in, closing the door with her hip. "Someone emailed Nora claiming to be you. They used an old email that had our Wi-Fi name in the footer. Like, how would a stranger even know that?" "They wouldn't," I said, "but a stranger doesn't need to know if they're good at making things up." She paced, then stopped and faced me. "I'm going to talk to Victor," she said. "To clear the air." "Clear what?" I asked. "The part where you made a Bumble radius into a fishing net? The part where you've been at his gym for a year?" The words came out before I could stop them. She swallowed. "That's not accurate?" I asked softly. She looked toward the window, the way people look at exits in movies. "It started with admiration," she said. "I won't pretend it didn't. He's the kind of man who remembers hospital floors." "And you're the kind of woman who wants to be remembered," I said. "It wasn't cruel. It was the truest thing I knew about her." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were steady. "I'm not asking you to bless this," she said. "I'm asking you not to burn me to the ground while I'm trying to walk out on my own feet." "I'm not the one with a match," I said. She nodded once, like a soldier acknowledging an order. "Okay," she said, and left. That night, I fell asleep in my clothes and dreamed of maps. Colored circles overlapped until they were a bruise. In the morning, I woke to 3 notifications. An email from Nora saying she'd scheduled a formal interview with Emma under company policy. A text from Jake that said simply, "Don't be mad, I think I messed up worse than the story," and a voicemail from a number that resolved in my brain before I finished pressing play. Victor. "Ryan," he said, the cello voice threaded with something I hadn't heard before, anger or alarm. "This isn't a request. It's a notice. Someone sent HR a packet with your name on it. IP logs, screenshots, timestamps of Emma's alt accounts interacting with my post within 60 seconds, a spreadsheet mapping gym check-ins to my calendar. The cover letter says from her ex-husband, which, again, I'm assuming is not you. I'm aware you and I are not on the same team, but there's a difference between conflict and sabotage. If you know who is doing this, shut it down. We will proceed internally, and for what it's worth," he exhaled. "We did not meet on Bumble. We've shared a gym for longer than I realized. That's on me. I intended to keep my life clean. I failed." The message ended. I stood in my kitchen and listened to it again and again until the words blurred into sound. Then I pressed call on Jake. "What did you do?" I said by way of greeting. He sounded wrecked. "I DM'd Nora," he said. "From a burner. I was trying to, I don't know, force a conversation. It was stupid. I used stuff I thought would make them take it seriously. I didn't mean to frame you." You used our Wi-Fi name. That frames me by default. I forgot it was unique, he said, very small. I thought everyone names theirs after their dog. We don't have a dog, I said, and laughed, a flat, bitter sound. Congratulations, Jake. You set off an HR grenade at your sister-in-law's job. I was trying to protect you, he whispered. From what? I said. The truth happening on time instead of when it's convenient? I rubbed my eyes. Delete everything. Pray they ignore you. Then stay out of it. He started to cry. I hung up. I didn't have space for both of us to break at once. At 9:03 a.m., Emma texted, "Going to see Victor. Please don't text me." I stared at the sentence and thought about the first time she'd texted me from a work thing 5 years ago when we were new and free and everything was a miracle. A picture of a marble-top bar, 2 straws and 1 glass, and the caption, "Wish you were here." I'd written back, "Me too." It had felt like the simplest math in the world. Now here we were, dividing by 0. At 9:41 a.m., our shared iPad lit up on the counter with an incoming call from a contact labeled V. It rang out. A minute later, her text, "HR wants to talk. Anonymous complaint claims to be you." I didn't reply. She sent another, "Don't do this to me, Ryan." I stared at the light on the smoke detector. Green, periodic, indifferent. At 10,020, my phone buzzed with a number I recognized now too well. Victor again. I let it go to voicemail and then hit play. "We are done," he said. "Not to me, but to someone else. He must have hit the wrong button while pacing. This is not a conversation. You will speak to Nora, and you will do it like a professional. Whatever you thought this was, it ends here. Do you understand me?" In the background, I heard Emma's voice, sharp and small at once. "We didn't meet on the app," he said, louder now, and I knew in my bones he had turned toward her. "We have been in the same gym for months. That is not an accident. That is not an accident. That is intention. This is over." The message cut off there, a jagged cliff where the rest should be. I stood in my kitchen with the morning sun slanting across the counter and felt, for the first time since the glass shattered, something like stillness. Not relief, not victory, just the absence of motion. The thing she'd been building in shadows had been dragged into light, and in light it looked like what it was, not romance, not genius, not destiny. Fixation. She had built a future out of other people's routines and Wi-Fi signals and proximity, and she had called it fate. And now, fate was telling her no. My phone buzzed again. "Emma, please, please answer." I didn't. I put the phone face down and made coffee and stood at the window while the kettle hissed. Outside, a delivery truck idled by the curb, the driver checking his route on a crumpled paper map like he didn't trust the blue line. I watched his finger trace the streets. I thought about routes, about the difference between getting lost and choosing a longer way home because you like the trees. I poured the water and listened to it drip through the grounds, slow and steady, like a clock relearning its job. When the coffee was done, I sat at the table and opened a blank document to make a list. The kind of list you make when the way forward is a foggy road and you're trying to lay reflectors. Call a lawyer. Ask HR to copy you on any formal notices. Change the Wi-Fi name. Text mom back about the lasagna. And at the bottom, underline because I needed the visual violence of the line, find out who you are if you're not her husband. My phone buzzed one more time. "Nora, we will be conducting our interview with Emma this afternoon. For your awareness, she is asked to provide context. If you have any factual corrections, please send them by end of day." I typed, "I will not be participating," then deleted it. Then typed instead, "I did not send any anonymous tips. I do not condone anyone doing so in my name." Then, because it felt important to say out loud, I added, "I wish none of this required witnesses." I sent it and stared at the blinking cursor until it felt like a heartbeat. That night, I cooked pasta and ate it from the pot in front of the TV without turning it on. At some point, I must have fallen asleep on the couch. I woke to a banging on the door and the knowledge, before I'd even stood, of who it would be on the other side. When I opened it, Emma stood there with a face turned into a mask by crying, a paper envelope crushed in her fist. Behind her, the hallway light turned everything hospital yellow. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she held the envelope out like an offering. I took it. Inside, a printed copy of a company policy, a letter with my name misspelled in the from line, screenshots of likes from accounts that looked like they belonged to no one, timestamps and gym check-ins, and all the threads of her obsession pulled together in a tidy, damning braid. "They think I'm a stalker," she said, voice shredded. "They think I lied to get close. They think," her voice broke. He said we didn't meet on Bumble. He said we shared a gym for a year. He said my name like it was a smudge on his sleeve. I looked up, and for the first time I didn't see my wife as the person who had slipped away from me. I saw her as a woman who had been chasing a story in which she was finally the chosen one, a story that had edited me out long before I noticed. I didn't reach for her. I didn't tell her it would be okay. It wouldn't. But I stepped aside and let her in from the hall because my mother raised me to bring people out of the cold. She went to the couch and curled into herself. I sat in the chair across from her and waited for my lungs to synchronize with hers. "What do you want from me, Em?" I asked when the silence had settled enough to carry questions. She looked up, and the bravado I'd been arguing with for months was gone. "I want you not to hate me," she said. "I want you to know I didn't set out to ruin us. I wanted to feel like I was more than a schedule and a rent check and a person who posted for other people. I wanted to stand near something bright and feel lit." "You were lit," I said softly. "You just kept turning toward someone else's lamp." She wiped her nose with her sleeve like a kid. "I think I need help," she said. "Real help." "I think you do," I said. It wasn't unkind. "Will you still be here while I figure it out?" she asked. "Not as my husband." "As," she faltered, "as the one person who knows me before and after." I looked at the policy in my lap, at the lines and clauses designed by people who had learned the hard way what proximity can do. I thought of the call from Victor, the wrong button message, the math of matching radiuses, the gym doors clicking open at 6:29 a.m., the way she had lifted her chin in the kitchen the night she came home from the party. I thought about love as an action, not a word, about the difference between rescue and care. "I'll be here for the logistics," I said, "for a while, for kindness, but I won't be your alibi." She closed her eyes and nodded like she'd braced for that answer and still felt the hit. "Okay," she whispered. We sat like that for a long time, two people with nothing left to barter but honesty. Outside, a siren doppered past, indifferent, efficient. I got up, put on water for tea, stared at the kettle like I could will it to boil faster. Behind me, she said, so quietly I almost didn't hear, "I never wanted to be this person." I didn't turn around. "But you are," I said, "and the only way you stop being her is by telling the truth and living with what it costs." The kettle clicked off. I poured, brought her a mug, and went back to my chair. We did not touch. We did not rewind. We sat with the steam rising and the space between us like a third presence, and for the first time since the glass shattered, I let myself think, not about how to hold it together, but about what happens after it falls. In the morning, she would go to HR. In the afternoon, Nora would say words like investigation and reassignment. Victor would tighten his policies and call it leadership. Jake would stop posting for a week out of shame, and then, because he is my brother, text me a meme about raccoons and trash cans that would make me laugh in spite of myself. And me? I would call a lawyer and learn to say "my wife" in the past tense without feeling my throat close. But before any of that, there was a night to get through and a couch where I could hear another person breathing and know, finally, that breathing wasn't the same as being alive. When Emma walked out that night, leaving behind the HR packet and her broken voice, I sat alone in the apartment, listening to the refrigerator hum like it was the only heartbeat left in the room. I opened the folder again, tracing the lines of evidence with my eyes. Fake accounts tied to our IP, gym scans from Pulse at the same times Victor checked in. Every scrap of proof was a confession written in code. I stayed up until dawn, staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly my marriage had become an investigation file. The morning sun came gray through the blinds. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Ryan," she said softly, "I know you don't want advice, but you need to protect yourself. She will pull you down with her." I swallowed. My throat felt raw. "She already has." "Then stop letting her," Mom said. Her voice had that firm edge mothers use when telling you not to touch a hot stove. By noon, the rumors had spread beyond the apartment. A friend from Emma's office called, his voice low, as if saying the words too loudly might infect him. "HR dragged her in this morning. Someone dumped everything on Nora's desk. Screenshots, gym logs, IP addresses. They're saying she was stalking Victor." I imagined her in that glass conference room, pale under the fluorescent lights, fingers digging into the chair, trying to hold her story together. For the first time in months, I didn't feel pain. I felt calm. The mask was cracking where everyone could see. That evening, she came home looking ruined. Her hair clung damply to her temples, mascara streaks marked her cheeks, her tote bag limp at her side. She collapsed on the couch like someone had cut her strings. "Victor ended it," she whispered. "He told them everything. That we saw each other at the gym, not on the app. That I chased him. He said I staged it. He said he wants no contact ever again." Her voice broke. She pressed her face into her hands and sobbed. I leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. "You built this," I said. My voice was quiet, but she flinched as if I'd shouted. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she cried. "I just wanted to feel alive." I let the silence stretch. Then I asked, "Alive or obsessed?" She looked up at me, eyes swollen. "Don't call it that. It wasn't obsession. It was admiration. Admiration doesn't get you fired," I said. The next days turned brutal. Within 48 hours, clients started pulling contracts from her agency. The gossip had leaked into professional circles, whispered through LinkedIn messages and Slack DMs. By the weekend, she was unemployed. Her phone rang constantly with calls she didn't answer. Her parents stopped returning her messages. Even her closest friends in marketing, the ones she'd sworn would back her no matter what, suddenly had full schedules. I watched her unravel piece by piece. One night, she sat at our kitchen table staring at her empty glass. "Ryan, please, tell me you don't hate me." I met her eyes. "I don't hate you, but I don't recognize you, and that's worse." Her lip trembled. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. Then came the legal fallout. The HR investigation turned into a formal report. Her name appeared in emails she accidentally left open on the shared iPad. "Termination under restructuring," the line read, as if they'd dressed up her collapse in corporate euphemism. I hired a lawyer. Emma tried to delay, begged for mediation, but the evidence was too heavy. The court process was inevitable. In hearings, her attorney tried to paint it as misunderstood professional admiration. But the judge wasn't moved. The packet, those carefully compiled logs and screenshots, spoke louder than excuses. The verdict was simple: divorce granted, financial assets split, but the house and car in my name. She walked away with a fraction of savings and the brand of someone untrustworthy. After one hearing outside the courthouse, she grabbed my arm. Her eyes were wide, desperate. "I never wanted to ruin us," she cried. "You were comfort, safety. He was possibility. Please believe that." I pulled free. "Love without loyalty is nothing. You built a shrine to him while you left me in the dark." She fell apart right there on the courthouse steps, sobbing while strangers passed, some whispering, some staring. I walked away. For the first time in months, the air felt clean in my lungs. But the story didn't stop there. Emma's spiral deepened. Photos of her with Victor at Pulse surfaced online, grainy but unmistakable. Forums called her the stalker girl. Recruiters stopped returning her calls. She tried freelance work, but word travels fast in a small city. She was radioactive. One night, weeks later, she turned up at the apartment door. Her eyes were bloodshot, her voice hoarse. "Ryan, please, I don't have anyone left." "You made sure of that," I said. Can we at least talk? Not as husband and wife, just as people?" I let her in. She sat on the couch like a guest in her own life. "I wanted to feel lit up," she whispered. "Victor was a mirror. I thought if I stood close enough, I'd glow too. But he's gone, and all I see is the dark." Her words stung because they were true in their own way, but they weren't enough. "You were lit already," I said. "You just never believed it, and now you've burned it all down." She cried quietly, shoulders shaking. For the first time, she admitted, "I think I need help, real help." I nodded. "Then get it, but not from me, not anymore." She stayed that night, curled up on the couch, shivering under a blanket. I lay awake in the bedroom, listening to her muffled sobs, and felt nothing but exhaustion. In the months that followed, she moved into a small rented studio across town. She drifted between odd jobs, never lasting long. I heard rumors she still lingered around Pulse Athletic, like a ghost clinging to the place she thought fate had handed her. Victor had long since moved on, introducing stricter HR policies, restructuring the company to prevent anything similar. He never mentioned her name again. As for me, I built something quieter. I filled the silence with runs in the morning, dinners cooked alone, evenings spent fixing the little things in the apartment. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Sometimes people asked if I was okay. I told them the truth. I'm finding peace. And after everything, that felt like more than enough. What do you think about this story? If you were in my shoes, would you have forgiven Emma after everything, or walked away the way I did? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next story.